Number 2 is, the second on the list, the improper ledger.
This is
fascinating.
This is the most important one.
Correct. And this is the one I think that results in the most number of decks on the ground.
Yeah.
By far, more than anything else on this list.
Correct. The rest of the list is just filler.
Now, what we see, and I don't know, we talk about this all the time. Literally every day.
Swear. I thought you were coming at it hot.
I was ready to, but we talk about this daily with customers, often on the podcast. We've done a YouTube video about it on site saying, like, look at this. It just...
Would you look at this? Look at this. Look at that. Look at this.
It's such a common practice on newly built homes that the exterior of the house is being finished and they want to put the ledger on so that they can continue with finishing the envelope of the house with stuccoing it, vinyl siding, whatever it's going to be. So you see it. We could take a drive right now and show you 100 houses that have been done this way.
If I could show you one, I could show you 100.
In states of construction. And what you'll see is a piece of Tyvek stapled up on the wall, ledger board put over top, ready for the rest of the house to get papered and wired or whatever they're doing. Mm-hmm. And all that they've attached that ledger to with is the same frame nails that they framed the rest of the house with.
Yep.
Which was smooth, bright framing nails.
Yep.
No galvanization.
Designed for spruce.
Right. And not meant to ever see water or copper. And so they just tap these things on quickly so that they can move on to the next thing. They're not building the deck. So they don't really care that it's attached structurally. I wish they did, because at that moment in time, that's the easiest time to make sure that it is attached properly. You know exactly, you don't have to do any guesswork as to where the structure is in the house that you can tie into. It'd be easier for everybody if they just do it then. Throw in a few leg bolts.
Even if they had like 8 ledger locks with them. Right?
Yeah.
That's it. Like the 8 ledger locks on a 14-foot board would do way more than those nails, than the 75 nails they wailed into the front of that.
Yeah. Yeah, because on most cases, there's no even attempt to hit anything behind. It's just
shit's given.
Into the OSB
pop.
Yeah, the strand board rim that they got on there, and it's just, yeah, exactly. Pop. They fired a bunch of nails in there into wherever their hand happened to hit the gun and the thing and made the nail fire.
Paid by the nail. Look.
Yeah.
There it is.
So there it is. There it's attached. They finish the rest of the house. They sell the house. Homeowner moves in. Homeowner decides they're going to build their own deck or hire a contractor who also doesn't know any better than the first guy that was there. And they build the deck on, and I don't mean to say, this is the reason why you should hire decking contractors.
Yep.
As opposed to a flooring guy who can do a deck, or a guy who's built a shed before and like he's comfortable with the tools.
That's why you hire electricians to do electrical and
correct.
Plumbers to do plumbing, and a framer. Like if you're putting a roof on your house, get a framer to put the roof on your house. That's what they do.
Yeah. But everybody knows somebody that can do this work for them. And yeah, they can probably do it.
He can do it for cheap.
80% well. They can probably do all the things. They know how to run the saw. They know how to run a drill. They can put the clips down on the deck. It's all fine. But the most important part they aren't aware of. Not because they're incapable of locating and driving a structural screw, but because they just don't know that they need to do that. And so the deck gets built on this ledger board that's just been popped in with a few nails. Everybody's happy. Deck gets done. Guy gets paid. Gone. Or homeowner builds it themselves. They're proud. And a few years later, if it even makes it that far,
it usually does, right?
The bloody thing wiggles off the house. Yeah, they're usually 3-4 years old when they crack. Like that one in Regina here, I bet you that's a 3 or 4 year old home. It looked like it was pretty brand new.
Yeah, I would have thought older than that, but yeah.
Well, it could be, but it's a newish home, right?
Newish.
And yeah, eventually just with like minor vibrations, the freeze thaw cycle, the whatever, the thing just wiggles its way out because those nails, like you can pull a smooth nail out of a wall with a hammer, no problem. Like just one guy's like, out it goes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take much for that to wiggle its way out. And anybody who's ever gone back into a ledger that's been installed that way and put the proper stuff in has seen that when you drive those things in, it sucks the whole board back to the wall and the nails pop out because just the lumber drying and like curling a little bit pulls the nails out.
Yep.
And that's what's keeping the deck on your house.
Somebody was
until it doesn't anymore.
2 weeks ago, and they told me that they were redoing their whole deck. They were just like going to tear it out. But what had happened was the guy was standing beside his house, beside his deck for some reason. Maybe he was cutting his grass or he was moving some like gravel along the side of his house. And he looked over and he could see that the ledger had separated from his house. Mm-hmm. And he was like, whoa, that looks strange. So then walks over and grabbed he said he used a lag bolt, but whatever, structural screw, lag bolt, doesn't matter. And drove it in and was like, oh no, like I'm in big trouble, right? Because it moved his whole deck and now his supports moved. And so he was like, okay, I'm actually going to take everything off and kind of start this over.
So that's the most common thing when when you're seeing decks laying in the ground in the news. I feel like 9 times out of 10, that's the problem.
Yeah,
they did not properly, and we knew that this was a big issue here. And then when we posted about that, and we have since taken it down because there were some legal things at play, I guess, with that stuff. Whatever, we were asked to take it down, so we took it down. But in the conversation that happened before we took it down, other people in other markets were like, "Yep, see it here all the time too." So it's not just here.
Okay, so then let's stop pointing out the obvious. How do we fix this? Do you think that the building inspector that inspected that house should lose his job and be sued for all medical damages? The inspector. Because that's his job.
So,
not the guy who builds the house.
But until last year, the city of Regina never required you to even tell them how you were fastening ledger to the house in the first place.
Right.
They never required you fastening detail of the ledger. So that guy was just doing his job. Here's the things you're checking for. The permit was approved without mentioning how you're attaching the board. So is it really his fault? Or is he just doing his job to the expectation that they gave him?
Here's what I don't like about that. They had no problem collecting the money for the permit.
Correct. Yeah.
So listen, if you're going to take the money, then take the job seriously.
Yeah.
It's like the person that ends up taking the rap on this is the guy who built it. And he is the lowest paid person in the entire equation. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, because he's in the trades, let's beat the shit out of him. It's like, that's not fair. The bureaucracy of this whole thing set it up wrong. Mm-hmm. The engineer has a clause in his thing that's like, no matter what I draw, no matter what I stamp, no matter what I say, it turns out it's not my fault. Like if you read the fine print on any engineer thing, it's like, no matter what happens, I'm not at trouble. I'm not at fault for this.
Yeah.
And then the city does their inspection. It's like, no matter what happens, I'm not at fault for this because I'm the city. And it's like, that's crap. It's your job. You designed it, engineer guy, and city approved it. And the contractor who doesn't have the resources, the financial resources that the engineer and the city do, he gets built, like he gets tagged with this. It ends up on his insurance, and that's crap. I think the city should eat this one.
Maybe. It's hard to say what the scenario was here. I think the one that was in Regina looks as though the deck was probably built at the same time as the house, which leads me to think it was on the same permit as the whole build, which leads me to think that there was an engineer involved and there was plans and there probably was a detail on that ledger board.
Right.
I'm guessing.
So then here we go. So you open up the plans and the ledger detail is there by the engineer because he wrote that down.
Yeah.
Guy's off the hook. Deck fell off.
Exactly. Yeah.
You said, use these screws, check mark.
This is where it falls onto the framer.
Nope. Next person in line.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying if the drawings were there by the engineer, check. City approved it, check, because that detail is there.
No, the inspector's supposed to be on site, check that. You're supposed to walk around the house.
You're right. Yeah.
He's supposed to say, I checked that ledger. It looked good.
Yeah.
He didn't.
Yeah.
He likely pulled up.
So there needs to be some sort of born responsibility between the installer and the inspector.
Right. And so the installer, like you said, he's a framer. He doesn't build decks. He's a framer.
Yeah.
So he frames houses. And so he used that same nails. They're super strong. They hold the whole house up.
Yeah.
They're really strong nails, right? They got great shear strength. That's what we know. Bam. In it goes. He's like pumped. So it's the inspector's job to catch that, educate that person. It's not the contractor's job. Yeah. Sure, it is his job. It's like the same as when you're speeding and you get caught speeding. It's like, it's your fault because it's like not knowing the rules isn't like, that's not an excuse. You have to know the rules.
Yeah.
And so, yes, the contractor is on the hook for some of this, but I don't think the city should be able to walk from this. I think they should pick up the tab on it. And I think if they did, it would change things. I hope a lawyer gets involved, and I hope a lawyer takes this all the way back to the city and sues the building inspector personally.
Okay.
Now I'll leave. It makes me so mad because they have no problem telling you how to do it, but they don't give two swear words about how it actually happens. They just want to charge you and tell you.
Yeah.
But then they don't follow up.
Correct. Yeah. No, there's definitely, like, we don't know all the details about that specific build, but there's definitely probably a few people that are at fault there. For sure, like whoever built the deck and whoever inspected the deck, those two are obvious. And whether it goes up from there, like, is the home builder responsible because they didn't inspect the work of their subtrade? Possibly. Or do they have a reasonable expectation that the guy followed the plans?
Right. They have a reasonable expectation.
And so
but like, again, it's like
just say.
Everybody needs to follow up on that.
Yeah. So for the love of God, for Wade's sanity in mind,
I doubt I'll get any angrier. Let's go.
Make sure that you are attaching the ledger properly. And if you're doing a deck yourself, fine. But the first step is making sure that thing's attached properly. And it's especially tricky nowadays, because of the type of floor systems that are going into house. On houses that are 30 years old, it's no big deal. You've got a solid rim joist all around, solid joist, everything.
It used to be all 2x10 everywhere, right? Or 2x12 rim. That'd be nice if they'd actually go back to that.
I think they should. Like, use your engineered stuff on the middle of the floor, fine. But like, have the rim joist have some structure to it.
Yeah, it should be an LVL or it should be a 2x10, 2-ply 2x10.
Yep.
All the way around the house. It doesn't cost that much.
What's happening now is just like you've got your engineered floor systems, typically your eye joists, which are the trickiest to connect into, or your open web trusses or whatever. But it's not as easy as just driving leg bolts in anywhere anymore. You got to make sure you locate some stuff and find some blocking underneath. You might have to put some blocking on their side of the wall.
Engineers started doing some stuff like that. They started speccing 2x10s again on the outside. If that would start to fix that, because so let's say it was a solid 2x10 rim around there, and the framer threw 75 nails into it. It likely doesn't fall off, right?
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah,
the nails they pull out of the OSB, no problem. But it's not the. Like if it was a fir 2x10, you tried to pull a nail out of a fir 2x10, you don't. You break your arm.
And they're already putting treated lumber on site anyway.
Yep.
As the cap at the top of the wall.
Yep.
And the next part that goes on there, like above that, is the rim. So they could just send out more of that.
Yep. Yeah.
But anyway, it's tricky. You got to know what you're doing. You got to do some investigation.
This is what I was talking about at the start of our podcast. Was like the guys that are in here. They're not the ones, right? They're the ones that already know.
So Forsman's Finest says framers should know what nails to use for a deck ledger. Agreed. And TC Deck says, I'm a framer and we have about $500 in Simpson hardware connections that are required for our ledger connections.
Yep.
So
that's a small price to pay. I'll bet you the ambulance ride was way more than that. Yeah. It probably cost you $1,500 to get there.
That's the other thing. A lot of people are commenting on that post were saying, they cheaped out. It's not cheaping out. It doesn't cost anything to do it properly.
Well, it does. It costs that. So it says it costs $500 to hook a ledger onto the house. That's fine.
Who knows what? So he might be talking about like lateral load anchors and all sorts of things. I don't know. But just for a handful of the proper structural screws,
we're
talking
60 cents a piece. Yeah,
like it's $5.
Yep.
That deck that was built there was all clad out, trimmed, and everything else. It was probably a $20,000 deck.
Yep.
$5.
And then you could get a pizza too. $5. Like, Little Caesar brings it over.
Anyway,
I'm on fire today.
I have a feeling that things are about to change in Regina with
I hope they
deck
do.
falling off the house like that, because at some point, like even if the city doesn't get formally involved in the lawsuit that's apparently going to happen, like they're going to have to hear about it from somewhere and be like, well, shit.
Yeah.
Like when that was built 7 years ago, we weren't asking for ledger. And they are now. They've now asked you to specify what you're doing for a ledger connection, thankfully, but they weren't back then. So
it's okay for code to change.
It is.
It's okay for that to happen. And I think that when it changes,
as long as it's changing for safety reasons, not just bureaucratic crap, because nobody wants that either. But
yeah, but it progresses, right? That's how it goes. Wiring is different, plumbing is different. Like it's okay for all of those things to change. Just then follow up with it.
Yeah,
make the code change, and then.
New England Deck Pro says we have to do lateral tension hardware.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you've got different ones from Simpson or Fastenmaster that make those lateral load anchors or tensioners, whatever you want to call them. That like they're kind of a backup plan. That says like, yeah, you're going to put some GRK structural screws in as well. You're going to attach ledger to rim. That's all good and dandy. But what if that doesn't work? It's like now they want you putting these lateral tensioners that are going from the side of a joist into the side of a in some cases into the side of the
floor
joist or
in the house.
legs screwed into the sill plate. Because
Yeah.
you know there's treated lumber there, and it's also encased in concrete, and it's not going anywhere.
Yep.
And so that's all bolted in there, and that's not going to. So that's just like that's extra insurance to make sure it's going to happen.
Yeah, could you imagine if you could get tied into the sill plate all the time?
But I've not seen a deck fall
thinking.
off that blew out the rim of the house because there was 55 GRKs in it,
Nope.
and it pulled the whole rim. That doesn't. If you put that stuff in there, that's should be good enough. If you're in an area that maybe is potentially earthquake areas, different rules.
Sure. Tornadoes,
whatever, right?
etc.
Joel Harper says in Georgia, I think he's LT Dex, I believe. In Georgia, where I am, we have to be licensed and to have continuing education. So that's interesting.
That is like
Here you have to have
a hack.
a desire to do the job.
Yep.
That's what you need here to be a
If you
contractor.
have a skill saw and a hammer and a tape measure, you're probably on your way.
Yep. Here, you just have to say, yep, I'll build it.
I don't like, now that I'm out of the building, I can talk about this because when I was in the building, I didn't like the idea. But now that I'm out and I get to look back in, I think that carpenters should have to go through the exact same process that plumbers and electricians do. Everybody complains that carpenters don't get paid enough money, but it's like, you don't take
You also
your,
didn't have
you,
to invest in yourself.
you
as
didn't
much,
take
right?
your craft as serious as those other guys are.
Some guys do.
Some
They've
guys
gone through
do.
and got the red
This is
seal and
like-
everything else, but you're not required to here. That's the thing.
Correct.
You're not allowed to go wire up a sub panel here without being an electrician.
Correct.
But you can build a house
You can frame the whole house. Did
because
you,
you
see
built
that
a
one,
shed one time.
the one last year that
Not a-
actually fell off the foundation?
I
Did
was
you
just
see
going to bring that up too. I was just going to talk about that too. There was a couple of them, wasn't there? 2 houses, I think. Or was it just one?
It was just one, I
2
think.
houses at the same stage or something. And who was talking about this recently with me? Just the other day. They're like, the stupid thing is that they did, in the media, they never talked about the builder. They never talked about who did that and how it was done. They talked about how strong the wind was that day. And
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
there was-
it doesn't matter how strong the wind
There was
was.
80,000 houses in Regina that didn't
That
blow
all
over.
didn't blow over.
The guy that built the house, front page.
So
Like
this was,
pedophiles.
he was,
There you go.
that house was what? It was
Right?
framed,
Yeah.
sheeted, windows and doors were in.
Siding was on. The
sided
whole
on
thing
too,
was
I think.
done.
Just they were working on the inside, I think.
Not
Like
that
it wasn't
day.
done. It wasn't moving ready.
Yeah.
Gust of wind comes. I might be underplaying it a little bit. But a massive windstorm comes and blows the thing right off the foundation. Like
It threw it onto a
foundation's
40-degree
here,
angle.
and it goes, bam, throws it on the ground, the house. So
Like the plates were still tied to the foundation. The house just shifted. Like the top of the house leaned over 40 degrees and the rest of it followed.
yeah.
And the floor was nailed to the concrete, like to the sill plate. So the floor plates were still in the same spot.
Right. And so
But the house just shifted.
right. And so smooth nails pulled out of the end grain of the 2x4s or 2x6s, whatever
Yep.
it was.
Over
right?
she went.
And the silly thing is here too, I've seen in other markets, we're getting a little bit away from deck specific, but in other markets, you're required for your sheathing to lap over the different, like the floors of your house, right?
Yes.
Like, so floor 1, floor 2, a sheet has to like
Yeah,
gap both to,
Yep.
as
2
a tie
feet,
back. As
2
a tie.
feet up.
And the rim too, right?
Yep.
Like, so from the rim and the sill plate of the foundation up into the thing that should be one piece, but you don't have to do that here.
Nope.
And so guys start sheeting, they sheet the wall while it's sitting on the deck still,
On the floor.
on the floor
Yep.
of the house.
Laid down, sheet it.
Sheet it, stand it up, and then put another band of ply on the outside to bring everything out to the same plane.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's nothing tying the wall to the actual sill plate of the foundation other than those little nails into the ends of the 2x4s.
Yep.
And it's like you go, and then, anyway, it's not completely out of possibility to think like, how did that happen? It's like, well, like all that's really holding it there
Was the weight of it.
is the weight of it sitting down to make sure those nails don't pull
They're
out.
heavy, man. By the time you get the drywall on there and the
Oh
mud,
yeah, like you
it's
don't
pretty heavy.
expect it's going to move like
Can't
that.
pick it up.
But anyway, that's
I couldn't pick it up.
but that's where something where like, you know, if had that been done, had the OSB been on the outside, lapping from rim up into the wall, then that couldn't have pulled out like that.
Nope.
That was I've done that a few times. My Canadian oat
Oh.
really came out there.
That's not what I was thinking either. I was like, really? You've pulled out a couple times? Really? I didn't think so.
I'm glad my kids, Bobby, Terry, Carter, Alice, Stanley, Rebecca, Peter, Bryce, Jacob, and the other ones I don't know about aren't listening to this podcast right now. Okay, anyways, that's
it could pull out. I did that.
nope. I said this wasn't a big list. That's the biggest one for me. I think probably for anybody is like the ledger connection. Make sure it's good.
Oh yeah, that's what we were talking about.
So anyway,
I forgot.
Now